What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, December 12th, 2016, getting on through the month, almost coming up on Christmas. 1 week from today is when the Electoral College meets to vote, and the situation has just reached a point of absolute silliness. And if there wasn't so much at stake, I think pretty much everybody would be rolling around on the ground laughing at just how absurd this effort is from the Hillary Clinton campaign to find some way for Hillary to get that White House. And we're going to be talking about that here at length during this first hour. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Quick little announcement. The White House has now canceled plans for a Christmas nativity scene. Although there are plenty of jackasses around Washington, D.C., they could not find 3 wise men or a virgin. So that little bit of holiday cheer is going to be absent from the state capitol. On a more serious note, and getting into the election circus, a federal judge has now blocked the Pennsylvania recount request, basically saying that Jill Stein lacks standing. There is no evidence anything was going on that was untoward. And Jill Stein now concedes the Michigan recount is a bust. They don't dare push that one any further because of all the election fraud that's been uncovered favoring Hillary Clinton. Now, the Nevada recount is also over. And Trump is still the winner, although not Nevada, but Hillary's margin over Trump shrank in Nevada. I mean, just razor thin. But as far as Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Trump is still the winner. Hillary is still the loser. Stein's political career is toast. And they spent enough money on the Michigan recount to build an entire new safe water system for the city of Flint, Michigan. But hey, governing is choosing, and governing is prioritizing, and Hillary Clinton is much more important than all those people in Flint, Michigan, who are suffering permanent, irreversible brain damage from all the lead in their drinking water, while Nestle continues to pump fresh water out of Michigan's aquifers for pennies on the dollar. Now, the Hillary Clinton campaign is out there. They're writing on this story that appeared over the weekend about how the CIA had sent a secret report to Congress confirming that Russia had hacked the election for Donald Trump. And they've been pounding this thing all weekend long. And the story was suspect right from the beginning because we have a government that cannot find the cyber criminals, cannot find the ransomware writers, even after years and years and years of effort. And yet only a few days after Obama says we must investigate this, we're being told the CIA has absolute proof that Russia hacked the election. And so now Hillary Clinton is calling for an intelligence briefing for the Electoral College this week before they're able to vote. They want to just go on in there and just put out all those things about how Donald Trump may have links to Russia, that Russia may have interfered with our election. Now, I think we can pretty much assume that Hillary does not want to brief the Electoral College on how she sold 20% of America's uranium to Russia in exchange for Russian money pouring into that Clinton Foundation. I'm pretty certain Hillary does not want to brief the Electoral College on how Saudi Arabia funded a large chunk of her campaign and was expecting to have influence over her White House. And I'm sure that Hillary Clinton is not going to brief the Electoral College on how George Soros funded even more of her campaign and is expecting her cooperation, or was expecting her cooperation on his agenda here. And of course, let's not forget Israel, which is routinely interfering in all of our elections through AIPAC, but we're not going to talk about that. No, it's only Russia and it's only Trump. Now, Obama has upped the ante on this situation, rejecting conspiracy theories, and basically the White House spokesperson has come on out and said, as a fact, that Donald Trump asked Russia to hack Hillary Clinton. That's what they're saying. They've actually committed to making that. Now, remember back during the third debate where Hillary Clinton set up this whole idea that Russia was going to hack the election on behalf of Donald Trump? So they were setting this up as a fallback strategy all along in case she lost. And the fact that there actually still is a Hillary campaign tells you somebody's still signing those paychecks. You would have thought after the election all those people would be looking for new jobs. Nope. They're still going strong here. And here is where it really gets interesting. The CIA has just issued a statement saying that no, in point of fact, they did not send any kind of a secret report to Congress saying that Russia hacked the election. Either somebody in Congress is making this up, or the Washington Post created this story out of thin air, the same way they did that story smearing the independent media as being Russian propaganda outlets. So somebody lied somewhere. And by the way, the FBI is out there saying they cannot find any evidence Russia had anything to do with hacking the election. The only hard evidence of hacking so far is coming from the state of Georgia, which is still demanding to know why the Department of Homeland Security was trying to break into their voter information database. That's the only hard evidence of hacking that's been going on. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. We're talking about this ludicrous claim that Russia hacked the U.S. election to help Donald Trump, and Hillary is now out there screaming the Electoral College has to take this into account before they vote a week from today. Now, we're starting to see a smear job coming out of the corporate media where they're out there saying that even if Trump becomes president, he's now seen as illegitimate. There's a dark cloud hanging over his presidency because Russia obviously helped him win this election. Because we all know the American voters are too stupid to think about things like Benghazi, pay-for-play corruption at the Clinton Foundation, smuggling of weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Cattlegate, Travelgate, Chinagate, Whitewater, all of that stuff. The American voters don't care about things like that, really. You know, this election was all about the promises made by Hillary, and that's all they should have been paying attention to. Krugman over at the New York Times is throwing this hideous tantrum, you know, saying that even if Trump becomes president, he doesn't deserve our obedience. He doesn't deserve the benefit of he's illegitimate right from day one. Talk about acting like spoiled children. And they're all out there screaming about, what about Russia's potential influence and interference in the election? Well, like I said before, Israel's been interfering in our elections for a very, very long time. Nobody seems to think that's a problem. You know, when AIPAC ganged up on people like Cynthia McKinney and kicked them out because they wouldn't go with Israel's agenda, nobody stood up and defended her as being the victim of foreign interference, did they? Now remember, Saudi Arabia is on record as saying they funded 20% of Hillary's presidential campaign. And they didn't give her that money just because they think she's a swell person. They were expecting favors back from a potential Clinton White House. The same thing with all the pay-for-play going on into the Clinton Foundation. Remember, the documents came on out during the investigation. The donors to the Clinton Foundation were expecting favors from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So why aren't the people screaming about Russia's interference on our elections getting on Saudi Arabia's case? And how about George Soros and all the money that he poured into Hillary's campaign, fanning up racism through Black Lives Matter to try and help the Hillary campaign? Why isn't anybody talking about how he interfered with our elections? Now, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia is out there demanding that Russia Today and Sputnik be labeled as foreign agents. They're agents of a foreign government. Ooh, bad, bad Russia Today, bad, bad Sputnik. But if you think about it by that same logic, Michael McFaul has now confirmed that American media, who were openly supportive of Hillary Clinton, were acting as official agents of the U.S. government and not an unbiased, objective source of news. And again, where was Michael McFaul all those years when Israel openly campaigned for this or that politician to win? Seems rather selective in his outrage, as it were. Another story coming out of the IB Times. Hillary Clinton would be president if it were not for the Comey email probe. Oh, if the election had been held before James Comey said the investigation was still underway, she'd be president. It's all Comey's fault. It's all the FBI fault. No, it isn't. Because if Hillary hadn't been breaking the rules in the first place, there wouldn't have been an investigation to begin with. Do you see this pattern here of a complete inability to take responsibility for their own actions? It's always somebody else's fault. Another story coming out from IntelliHub suggesting the CIA may try and push for a new election, find some way to get this one so tangled up that they say, all right, Obama gets to stay in the White House for another 6 months, and we're going to have another election in June, and this time we'll succeed in stealing it for Hillary Rotten Clinton. Now, Dan Rather, who we mentioned last month, rose to network stardom. Oh, we just lost our connection to RBN, and I don't know why. Let's see if we can get that back. And there we go. Okay, and we're back on the air here. I don't know why we lost our connection. It could be some of Hillary's hackers. They've been after absolutely everything that we're doing here. Dan Rather, who we pointed out last month, rose to network stardom from a virtually unknown small market TV station by lying to the American people that he had been shown the Zapruder film of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the headshot had rocketed Kennedy's head forward. Okay, of course, we know now that the Zapruder film was made public that Kennedy's head actually flung backward. Rather bought his network stardom lying for the assassins of President John F. Kennedy. So now he's out there jumping on board here saying about how our founding fathers warned about a demagogue president backed by a foreign adversary. You mean like all those recent U.S. presidents under Israel's control? Is that what you're talking about there, Dan? Or is it only a problem when it's not Israel who's in control of America's politicians? And maybe that's a big part of what's behind the corporate media ire. Yes, we want the U.S. president to be a puppet, but he's supposed to be Israel's puppet. He's not supposed to be Russia's puppet, or worse, independent. We can't deal with an independent America. He's got to be slaves to Israel. Now, last summer, the Huffington Post came out with an article that made a very good point. Who cared who leaked Clinton's emails? Okay, what people should focus on was the corruption exposed by the leaks. They're talking about the DNC email leaks, not the country or people suspected of uncovering such data. That was last summer. Today, the Huffington Post is running an article saying that Russia's hacking of the election is grounds for the courts to simply hand Hillary the White House. And again, there is no evidence Russia had anything to do with the DNC email leaks. Julian Assange has said it wasn't Russia. He implied it was Seth Rich, who was gunned down in the streets of Washington, D.C. about the same time. And amazingly enough, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, said that the DNC hacks were an American insider, because if it had been Russia, we never would have seen it, because Russia's just as good at hacking as the U.S. Nobody's been able to actually prove Stuxnet came from the United States. Russia's just as good at that. Now, Jack Berkman, who's a GOP lobbyist, has added another $5,000 to the existing reward for information on the murder of former Democratic National Committee employee Seth Rich. This brings the total reward right now to $150,000, which is the largest reward for information about a murder in the history of Washington, D.C. Now, Craig Murray, the former British ambassador, is saying this story about Russia hacking the U.S. election is bovine excrement. He used a different word, but I can't use that without risking the license of our radio affiliates. And by the way, Murray said he met the person who leaked the DNC emails, and it was an insider, not Russia. So what we have right now, to sum up, is apparently there is absolutely no basis for the Washington Post story that the CIA gave Congress a secret report which proves Russia hacked the election on behalf of Donald Trump. The CIA is saying it never happened. Either somebody in Congress made it up, or the Washington Post was lying again. And given that recent smear job they did on us in the independent media, about how we're all official Russian propaganda outlets, I think the Washington Post is just kind of up to their old tricks. Now, David Ignatius, who's a columnist over at the Washington Post, wrote an editorial saying that truth is losing. Now, what he really means is the truth, according to the U.S. government, is what's losing. In other words, the propaganda. The lies are what's losing. Now, Trump is saying, if you want to talk about fake news, let's start with CNN and the CIA, because they certainly have been authors of some of the biggest whoppers in U.S. history. And don't forget, Hillary Clinton loved fake news. She was using it all during the campaign with all these allegations that Donald Trump had groped these women and done this and done that, all of which was discredited. Hillary Clinton loved fake news until she started losing. And now, the bad fake news people. And it's just completely hypocritical. And it shows once again that Hillary Clinton just says whatever she needs to say at that moment to win her argument. There's no actual consistent philosophy or policy behind her thinking, which is why she would have been a terrible president anyway. Now, let's not forget that it wasn't all that long ago that 50 intelligence analysts working out of CENTCOM went public complaining that their intelligence reports on ISIS and Al-Qaeda were being altered by senior government officials. So when they come on out and say CIA said this or FBI said that, you can't even believe that, because these things are being rewritten to suit a policy, to suit an agenda. And the whole world is watching this circus going on right now, and they're laughing at us. They're worried, but they're laughing. I got an email from somebody in Europe saying that they're concerned that if Hillary steals the White House, it'll be a civil war in this country, and because of economic globalism, that will have repercussions around the world. And if Hillary steals the White House and there isn't a civil war, nobody in Europe is going to listen to her as having any legitimacy or credibility. Story coming out of Blacklisted News. German politicians are worried about the striking increase in Russian propaganda and fake news, meaning the push for war. Trying to go back to the Cold War, the 1950s and 1960s. Oh, the Russians are doing terrible things. The Russians are torturing puppy dogs. The Russians are putting kittens in the dryer. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Donald Trump is out there mocking this Russian hacking conspiracy and reminding everybody, justifiably, this is coming from the same people who assured us Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. Assad was gassing his own Alawite supporters with sarin gas. It's from the same people who botched the Bay of Pigs. The CIA is out there, or at least the Washington Post is out there, trying to treat the CIA like it's an unimpeachable source. And that's completely, utterly ridiculous. They're just trying to use one set of lies to bolster another set of lies to support another set of lies. And as I mentioned before, the only hard evidence that exists of any actual computer hacking related to this last election is down in Georgia, and that was coming from the Department of Homeland Security, which so far is not responding to requests from Georgia to find out what that was all about. Now, remember when the Washington Post did this smear job on the independent media? And they cited as their unimpeachable, trustworthy source a website called propornot.com, which is short for propaganda or not. And they had a list of 200 websites. I'm proud to say mine was one of them. And they just went to town saying, oh, they're all Russian propaganda outlets. And then the Washington Post was forced to pull on back and say, well, we're not really sure if this is accurate or not. We're merely reporting what Propornot said. And then everybody's saying, okay, well, who are they? And Prop or Not went to very great lengths to hide their origin, but it didn't work. They have been tracked down. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about this Prop or Not website, which was the sole source for the Washington Post smear job on the independent media that we are all part of Russia's propaganda machine. And the Prop or Not website is registered through a private domain registration company. which is used to mask the actual owners and operators. Now, investigations have shown that the business address for the people behind Prop or Not is this one-room office in New Mexico that serves as a business address for some 30 to 40 different companies. That alone tells you right there something weird is going on when they're going to that much trouble to conceal who they really are. But according to this story that came out of Investment Watch blog, investigators have tracked this back and exposed Prop or Not as being a CIA operation, and apparently they were using Ukrainian propagandists as contractors, and apparently some of the giveaways are hidden inside some of the writings at the website. Now remember, after the Washington Post story, Prop or Not went back and explained their criteria for declaring somebody an official spokesman for Russia was you link to a story in Russia Today. Well, I also linked to whitehouse.gov, and so by Prop or Not's rationale, that makes me an official White House spokesperson, doesn't it? Or at least Washington Post. All right, we're going to take some phone calls. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, I was going to say that Prop or Not is a CIA. Those are all that's a front business.
Yes.
You know, they had Bob Baer. I was flipping through the reruns of CNN interviews, and, you know, he's the one who says there needs to be a new election. And you know what he said? He says, you know, if we did this to democracies, interfered in somebody's vote, and then in the next sentence he goes, this is a revenge by Putin for what we did in the Ukraine. I'm like, so you just says we do. At first he says if we did this, and then he turns around and says we did it in Ukraine. I mean, the guy is. These people will tell you what they're doing if you listen. You know?
Well, yeah, but their attitude is it's okay for the U.S. to interfere in other people's elections, but not okay for them to interfere in ours. And the CIA has a long, long history of rigging elections in other countries as part of this ongoing program to bring about regime change in countries that we think ought to be more cooperative with American businesses. And so it's very hypocritical for them to be complaining about this. And Donald Trump made a really excellent point that if Hillary had won the election, and Trump's people had come on out and said, we'd like to look into the possibility of election fraud, he would have been denounced as a wacko tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist.
But they're scared now, Mike, because they're not doing all this for nothing. They're pulling out all their cards almost with their operatives and the media. Let me tell you, if Trump gets in, he'll purge the State Department and the CIA, and that's not what they want.
Oh, it's worse than that.
We're in a dangerous
it's worse than that.
history, Mike.
It's worse than that. I mean, a lot of people are looking at all these people who are going along with Hillary Clinton. They won't say no to her. They won't stop her. They won't do anything about it. And the reason is, after almost a quarter of a century, 30 years actually, crimes and corruption going all the way back to the Iran-Contra gun and drug running operation out of Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton. The Clintons have the blackmail goods on everybody in power. And Hillary, early in the year, had said, if I don't win the White House, I'm going to start ruining people. And nobody wants to be at the top of that list when she starts releasing all this information. Because on the day when she realizes she's not going to get that White House, when it finally sinks into her, she's going to start blowing the whistle on everybody and send a lot of people to jail. We might even see a bug out of the top level of the government, just heading for the border and getting on out before the handcuffs start showing up.
It's just a shame. There's rogue elements in all of our institutions. That can be seen by now. But, I mean, you do have Ray McGovern, who was in the CIA, and William Binney, who was in the NSA, who came out. They've been purged out. What Trump needs to do is purge these bad elements out and put the good elements back in. But they're not going to let him do that because you know what happened to JFK.
Yeah. I mean, right now, if Hillary can't steal the White House at the Electoral College, the next step is going to be assassination. And I hate to say it. I don't want to see it happen, but that's definitely where they're going. All right, well, listen, Dustin, we got to take a break for commercials. Do you have anything more to say?
Oh, no, thanks, Mike.
All right, we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And this effort to stop Donald Trump, this effort to prevent the American nation from breaking free of the New World Order, It's reached a point of utter ridiculousness. Story coming out of Metro in Great Britain, and they mentioned right in the article, these are unsubstantiated rumors only, but they're so juicy we're going to tell you anyway, and they're claiming Russia is now blackmailing Donald Trump with an orgy sex tape. I mean, that's the shark right there. They just jumped the shark on that one. It's ridiculous. All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Tammy in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I was calling in regard to the CIA's, stupid allegation about Russia interfering in the elections. If you remember, back when the Department of Homeland Security was wanting to get involved with all the states, that was the allegation then, was Russia. And then Georgia and one other state were the only ones that didn't take their help, where their help included downloading all the voter information and all the election information from 48 states. So what a way to conjure up a false report, since they've got all the information just about except for 2 states.
Yeah, that would definitely be a way to do it. But I mean, obviously, it raises the issue. If Georgia told the federal government, stay out of our elections, and the federal government is trying to hack into their election system, that's the only hard documented case of hacking in this election. It's not from Russia. It's not from WikiLeaks. It's not from wherever. It's from within the U.S. government itself.
Exactly. And another thing that they can use with that, if they wanted, was another reason to abolish the Department of Homeland Security, because everybody else is catching things except them.
Absolutely. And of course, certainly their bastard offspring, the TSA, has done a huge amount of harm to our tourism industry. And certainly we have felt that out here in Hawaii. I mean, our local tourism board likes to trumpet, our hotels have an 80% occupancy rate, but what they don't mention is how many resorts and hotels have gone completely out of business and are now boarded up because of the loss of tourism traffic coming from the United States of America, because people just don't want to put up with that TSA stuff anymore. And in all their years of operation, TSA has not actually caught a real terrorist. They've stolen a lot of iPads and cell phones and a bunch of other stuff. They smashed a very expensive laptop of mine up in Seattle, but they haven't actually caught any real terrorists. And every time Department of Homeland Security runs a security drill on TSA, 80 to 90% of the practice guns and bombs get right on through them because TSA is too busy fondling the really bodacious babes.
Very true. I myself won't even put myself through that, because it was a nightmare the one time I attempted, because I'm a diabetic and they were wanting to take my machine that I needed. And
it is. It's ridiculous. I mean, the people who are working at those checkpoints at the airports, these are people who couldn't get a job at the local burger place. And they're not very smart. They don't know what they're looking at. They're just trained to be aggressive and abrasive and hope that you'll react in a way where they're justified in giving you the rubber glove treatment. And they're really not very smart at all.
I agree totally. Well, I just wanted to mention that because I thought if they even did come up with a report, how could you believe it, since they've already taken all that information from 48 states?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're coming up on a point where the American people are finally starting to realize you can't take anything anybody in the government or the corporate media says at face value, nor should you. A skeptical people are a free people. And that's what they're really fighting against right now. They've had this wonderful little matrix that Americans have grown up in for decade after decade, generation after generation, and all of a sudden it's falling apart, and they're in a panic. Because they've gotten by with lies, fraud, and deception so long, they don't actually know any other way to run the country. And that's why they're in a panic. If there's one thing we can point to that the independent media has succeeded in doing, we have removed from the government and the corporate media their ability to lie to the public with impunity. And without that, they're really in a world of hurt. And even if the independent media were to vanish tomorrow under some draconian Nazi-esque digital book burning, Does anybody really think that people are just going to overnight go back to trusting the corporate media and the government? Of course not. If anything, a purge of the independent media is just going to make it even worse.
And then anybody that doubts will be labeled a Russian collaborator, or a Russian agent or something like that to demonize.
And, again, that's kind of a futile gesture, because people who are my age understand the Cold War commie scare of the 50s and 60s was a fraud to cheat us out of our money and the lives of our children for wars of conquest. The younger generation has grown up in a public school system that did not propagandize them constantly about how evil the communists were, or in this case, the Russians. And that's why it's not getting the traction they want it to get. But they can't think of anything else to do. I mean, starting to tell the truth, having a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would solve the problems, but none of them want to do that. As a class of human beings or subhuman beings, politicians can never, ever, ever admit they were wrong or lied or did anything bad. They take credit for everything good that happens, even if they had nothing to do with it, and anything bad that happens, they find some subordinate to offer up as the sacrificial lamb. Okay?
Thanks a lot.
All right, we're going to let you go and switch over to John in Barbados. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Love what you did with the graphic at the top of the What Really Happened page.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of people picked up on that one.
This hack of the DNC, it's clear to me that it wasn't a hack. It was a release by a fizzed-off Bernie Sanders supporter.
Well, it was definitely a leak. I mean, when the emails first came on out, even the DNC said there was absolutely no evidence their computers had been hacked into, and we knew it was an internal leak. But an internal leak isn't something Hillary can use to steal the White House, so it's those gosh darn Russians, and we know they did it because somebody at the CIA lied to somebody at the Congress who lied to somebody at the Washington Post who lied to the rest of us, so it must be so.
And I have an announcement to make. The Syrian Arab Army, and blame those Russians, have taken full control of Aleppo, including
you mean Palmyra?
Were previously controlled
You mean Palmyra?
Yep.
Yeah, Palmyra. No, Aleppo is under Syrian government control, and all of a sudden, as soon as Obama waives limitations on weapons to be given to terrorists in Syria, the terrorists grab the city of Palmyra. They're not ready to give up there.
No, but apparently, according to the Homs governor, the governor of Homs, the guy in charge, 90% of the people have been evacuated already.
Yes.
So they're trying to get the rest of them out, and then
Russia and Syria will uncork on them. And again, the thing is, Obama does not want the loss of Syria as part of his legacy because it's going to be the worst defeat for the United States since Vietnam. Even if Obama doesn't think they can win in Syria, he wants it lost under Donald Trump and not himself.
Well, I think so. I mean, he's going to try and keep it going one way or another, but I think things are moving so fast nowadays, it's going to be a very difficult job to keep it going as the Syrian Arab Army are released from various other parts of the country to take on the eastern sector now.
Yes. Yes.
We're looking at a rapid victory, a rapid turnaround.
Well, I don't know about that because one of the things that Obama is now sending to the terrorists in Syria are Stinger missiles to hold the Syrian and Russian aircraft off at a distance. And that's going to complicate the situation on the ground.
Well, it will, but, I mean, the information that the Russians have and all the drone information and what have you, they'll be firing their caliber cruise missiles from the Caspian Sea and what have you, and doing an enormous amount of damage to these attack carriers. I don't think these Stinger missiles, too little, too late, as far as I can see.
Okay, well, I hope you're right. I do know that the Russians, not necessarily the Syrians, but the Russians have developed some very effective countermeasures that will actually detonate these things long before they actually hit the target itself. So that may change the balance.
Yeah. I've heard of the similar system where they can actually deflect the missile so that it it cannot track properly the aircraft it's aimed at. So,
well, that can be done with flares, or I know that the U.S. Has a system to blind infrared guided missiles, and I really don't want to go into any fine details about that. Anything else, John?
Well, I'm looking at what's happening in America and this nonsense that's going on. I mean, it's a joke.
It is. America's image in the world has been completely destroyed by Hillary Clinton and her spoiled brat liberologists. That's what I'm going to call them. It's emerging. They're a cult, and they're no different than Scientology in the way their belief operates or the tactics they use. So we're going to call them liberologists now. The Church of Liberology.
Well, I mean,
by L. Ron Hillary.
The tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist has now been replaced by fake news.
Yes.
And who's producing most of the fake news?
The U.S. government. But you see, their fake news is good, and our real news is bad. Like I said, we've taken away their ability to lie to the public with impunity, and Americans are looking at what's going on now, and all of a sudden they're looking back at all the things they were ever told their entire lifetime and realizing they have spent their entire lifetimes basting in a sauce of lies. And they are not happy about it. I'm hearing so many angry people that you think would be the calmest, most zen-like, just tranquil, I'm living my life, I don't care about these things, and they're getting angry. They're getting very, very angry at what's been going on. And realizing they've been made fools of by their own government. They have been treated like morons and idiots by the government they have been supporting with their money and the lives of their children, and they're not happy about that one tiny bit.
Well, I can confirm that the people that I talk to in Europe and Britain, if Hillary does steal the White House, nobody's going to take any notice of her. She'll be blanked.
Yes, I'm hearing that from a lot of people. I'm getting a lot of emails from Europe saying exactly the same thing. That they're going to say the United States does not have a legitimate federal government if Hillary steals that White House. It may be a soft coup. There may not be any blood, but it's going to be a coup anyway. And again, I think Hillary just wants that title. She wants to be the president, and after that, she doesn't care what happens, because she and her advisors have to realize if they steal the White House and they go into the White House, nobody's going to be listening to them. Nobody's going to obey her. Nobody's going to pay attention to what she wants, where there's going to be civil disobedience on an absolutely epic scale. And if there isn't a civil war, it's going to precipitate a Soviet Union-like collapse of the United States government. But Hillary doesn't care. She just wants that title of being president. And as far as she's concerned, the rest of the 330 million Americans, could jump off a cliff. Well,
I think the other thing that I'm looking at now is this Clinton Foundation. It's already taken 2 hats, one from New Zealand and what have you. So these people have been pouring money into the Clinton Foundations from all over the world, and people are now looking at why did these governments feed money into the Clinton Foundation without approval of their Treasury departments
or approval of the voters. I mean, it's not like these leaders were using their own money. They were using tax money, and they won't explain why they were doing it when the tax money needed to be spent at home. And so, that Clinton Foundation, when that blows up, it's going to take a lot of world leaders with it.
Absolutely. That's my feeling entirely.
Okay, well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there? Going once? Going twice? Hello, are you there? Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I take it you have some furry critters around you.
Yeah, I got 2 big dogs.
Good for you.
Yeah. Anyway, what I wanted to say is what's going on with the CIA, and people got to understand this, and with Russia, right? First of all, the CIA is not what people think it is when they see these stupid movies, TV shows, and even these books where they make them out like James Bond characters. They're a bunch of sleazy, slimy little hacks that some of them work directly for the CIA, Many of them are contractors for them. Many of them actually go out and many of them are actually businessmen who are actually like the Bushes are an example of that, who run like oil companies and stuff, and meanwhile do the CIA's bidding, because they really are working for
Well,
the
it
CIA.
does, yeah, but it does
They're able
open
to make
up business contacts. When Terry Reid wrote the book Compromise, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA, he was saying most of the people involved in that whole gun and drug running operation out of Arkansas, they were business owners, but being part of the CIA opened up contacts that were good for their business and allowed them to do a better business, and they made money off of it. Now, the one time I was in contact with the CIA, it started originally at a place called the Pacific Institute for Advanced Research, which was in Hollywood, just a block or so down from the Magic Castle. And then they recontacted me when I was working for CBS Television City, and they wanted to sort of bring me in, but the first thing they asked me to do was sabotage a game show that was being produced by somebody who wasn't a CIA asset, so the game show that was being produced by the CIA asset would be the one that sold, and being cursed with a moral and ethical sense, which is definitely not a job requirement for the CIA, I refused. But I came away from that experience. And by the way, I was let go from CBS Television City almost immediately thereafter and wound up having to work for a Christian TV station in Orange County. But what my impression of the CIA is, they're mafia thugs wrapped in the American flag. And I think if you look at Jack Ruby, he was not only CIA, he was a paymaster for organized crime.
Mafia.
So mafia. There's a lot of crossover between the two.
You look like a poster boy for a mafia movie, to make a mafia movie, as a matter of fact.
Me?
And the same thing with Oswald probably has something to do with the CIA.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. That was documented he was in the CIA. That whole Russia, we're going to feed them false radar data and all the rest of that. Anyway, listen, I need to let you go here. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And it's now official. Pennsylvania has certified their election results. Trump is the winner. And that rounds out the set of three. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania all remain in Trump's column. And that means in order to hijack the Electoral College, Hillary Clinton is going to need to persuade 38 electors, more than she actually has, to vote for her. That's a big number. Now, there are about 10 who are saying that they're going to be faithless and they'll accept whatever fines and whatever their state law prescribes, but they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton. There's only one problem. I think any elector, and by the way, these 10 are filing some kind of a lawsuit where they're going to say, we're 10 electors and we're saying Trump shouldn't be the president and we're going to tangle it up in the court system, blah, 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 blah. My feeling is if these electors do not wish to do the job that they were appointed to do, the honorable thing to do is to resign. And I think their state elections people ought to seriously think about yanking these faithless electors who are out there campaigning against the person who won their state and replace them. But again, because of this web of blackmail coming out of the Clintons' 30-year crime spree, nobody wants to be the first person to say no to Hillary Clinton. Nobody wants to be the first person to say, you've lost this, let it go. Because they'll move right to the top of the list of people Hillary Clinton is going to destroy with all the dirt that she's got on everybody. And she's got dirt on everybody. Okay, let's go to the phones again. Gina in Texas, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. You kind of took my topic there with the Hillary Clinton and the electoral issue. I think that we need to find out who those 10 electors are and what states they are. And those people in those states really need to take some kind of action to remove, as you say, those 10 electors.
Well, you know, tar and feathers is traditional.
Well, I wanted to say I like your shirt today.
Oh, from Ron Paul, yes.
And now that we know, so we are obligated, how do we actually do something if they actually manage to steal this election?
Well, that is a very,
new
very
election and all of this.
That's a very, very difficult question. And again, one of my agendas, if you will, for the last 22 years has been to avoid a bloody revolution in this country. But I am frankly very alarmed at the number of people and groups who are saying that the response to Hillary stealing the White House is going to be a civil uprising, and I'm not going to risk my alabaster body getting in the way of one should it happen. I think at the very least we need to go on doing what we're doing and proclaim to the world that we, the American people, understand our system is not democratic. It's being hijacked. It's totally corrupt. And we do not support a potential Hillary administration. You heard it from John in Barbados. Nobody's going to be paying attention to her from Europe. And we're just going to ignore her here in the United States. Maybe we ought to just build a wall. Instead of across the border with Mexico, we'll build it around Washington, D.C., throw food over it every once in a while, and let them go on pretending that they're running the country.
Build it around Hillary.
Yeah, build
and
it.
put alligators in the moat.
Okay, absolutely. All right, well, listen, Gina, got to let you go. Got to do a station ID, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we get back into the news here, wanted to update you a little bit. If you go over to the republicbroadcasting.org website, you're going to see these ads for these Pro-Pure products. And John Stadmiller just asked me to tell you that there is now a Christmas special going on, where if you buy any of those products between now and Christmas, you will get 25% off the price of those products. So it's 25% Pro-Pure products. You've heard the ads on the show here. It's very good stuff. And so between now and Christmas, it's 25% off. That's the Christmas special. So do make a point of clicking the links and looking at the products and see what's there that you will find useful. Now then, as long as we're getting onto this issue of Russian influence over Donald Trump, we need to set the Wayback Machine to last October, when it came on out that John Podesta, Hillary's campaign manager, owns 75,000 shares in a Russian energy company that is connected to Vladimir Putin. So why isn't the Electoral College have their knickers in a twist over that? So, now then, the other day we were reporting on how Donald Trump spent only about half of what Hillary Clinton did and trounced her in this election. Widest Electoral College victory in recent history, and all the screaming about Hillary won the popular vote is nonsense once you start deducting all the illegal immigrant votes, about 3 million, according to votefraud.org and truethevote.org, another estimated 1.2 million dead votes, plus all the other rigging and hacking that they were discovering up in Michigan. And it may be, the latest estimate I've heard is that at least 20 million of Hillary's votes were fiction. So she did not win the popular vote. And remember back during the primary, she didn't care about the popular vote. When Bernie Sanders kept winning the popular vote and somehow Hillary came out with all the delegates, she wasn't screaming about how unfair the system was back then, was she? Anyway, getting on back to the budget, it's now come on out that Hillary, in fact, spent a lot more money than was previously known. Apparently, Hillary Clinton, if for nothing else, will go in the history books for the most expensive presidential campaign in history, because she burned through $1.2 billion with a B dollars in her campaign for the White House. And I'm sure a lot of the people who were signing those checks are now regretting having done so. I imagine there's a line outside the Clinton Foundation of people wanting refunds. And Hillary's problems are not over, because as of right now, she is a private citizen. She's not even a candidate. She's certainly not the president. She's not the Secretary of State. She's a private citizen just like you and I, and subject to the law. Now, as you know, there was a defamation lawsuit launched against Hillary Clinton by the families of the Benghazi victims. who Hillary had told Benghazi was a terror attack. At the same time, they were telling the American public it was all because of this very inflammatory movie about Mohammed, which turned out not to actually exist beyond a hastily edited trailer. And then Hillary upped the ante by going on out and calling these people like Patricia Smith, just said, oh, they're liars. They're all liars here. Adding insult to injury. They've already lost members of their family. And now Hillary Clinton is calling them all liars in the media. That's defamation. And so the case has hit federal court in Washington, D.C., and her lawyers are asking for a dismissal of the lawsuit. Because after all, it's Hillary Clinton. And, of course, the lawyers for the plaintiffs are saying this shouldn't be dismissed because it sets a dangerous precedent that famous people are above the law. And that is not what the United States is about. Now, as we're talking about the real media versus the independent media or the fake media or everything, we've been talking about how social media is going through a major transformation. People are canceling their Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter accounts, and they're going into these new startups like Scene Life and Diaspora and Gab, which are censor-free. And Yahoo is already on the warpath, smearing the new up-and-comers. Oh, if they're censorship-free, then they must be havens for white supremacists and Nazis. You don't want to go over there and have free speech. Or you're just an evil person. If you're a loyal American, you will stay here with Yahoo and Facebook, and you'll be censored and controlled here. And by the way, in the new NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, there is a provision for what, for lack of a better word, could be called the Ministry of Truth, in which they're literally putting together a system by which anything that is going to be televised, broadcast, or published even on the internet must first get a seal of approval from the Ministry of Truth of the U.S. government. We're going right into George Orwell here. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're still talking about politics. We're talking about the real media versus the fake media. And now we're going to get into the war zones. As John in Barbados mentioned, the U.S.-backed terrorists, having been driven pretty much out of Aleppo, are trying now to keep this war in Syria going by retaking Palmyra. And the Syrian army has managed to evacuate 90% of the civilians, get them out of harm's way, and they're trying to get the rest of them out, at which point they're going to flatten the place. And we're seeing all these terror attacks crop up all over the place. There was one at a Coptic church in Egypt here. Twin blasts at central Istanbul, 15 dead over there. Oh, it's ISIS. ISIS coming to get you. That's why we have to put Hillary in the White House, because only Hillary can deal with ISIS. And, I mean, it almost sounds like they're shrieking. They're that desperate to cling to power. And that's really what it's all about. The recognition that the rise of Donald Trump is also the rise of the independent media and the decline of the old way of doing things. And those who have become rich and famous and powerful in the old way of lies, fraud, and deception, they fear their loss of stardom, and they're not going to go gracefully. Cornered animals are very, very dangerous, and we have to always keep that in mind. Now, Donald Trump, along with shutting down that portion of NASA that has been pushing human-caused global warming and looking at other very expensive programs, has set his sights on the F-35. And he's declared the program costs are now out of control for a weapon system that may not ever really be effective, as so many recent products by the military-industrial complex have been. And he's absolutely right. This is the most expensive military aircraft development program in U.S. history, and they've produced a piece of junk. Can't fly in the rain, can't fly in the fog, can't fly near lightning. Can be defeated in a dogfight by 1970s vintage aircraft. The helmet fire control system still does not work. The software for the onboard cannon won't be ready until 2018, 2019, someplace in there. It's got a bad habit of exploding engines. The insulation in the fuel tanks keeps falling out. The original naval version couldn't land on a carrier. They had to go back and redesign that tailhook. But it was really good at ramping up profits for the defense contractors who would then share a little piece of the action with the members of Congress. You give us billions for the weapon, we'll throw a few million into your re-election campaign. It's a kickback scheme. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Brendan in San Francisco. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Just been racking my brain trying to think of ways that I can be more proactive and go on the offense instead of sitting back and taking all this fake news, Russian hacks. I'd like to try to start a meme that these are leaks, not hacks, and just keep hammering that, leaks, not hacks. I want to maybe make a sign and put it on my car when I'm driving to work, and it just simply says leaks, not hacks. I watched a video from Gene Sharp about how to start a revolution, and one of the things they were doing in protest was banging on pots and pans. There's got to be something we can do to take this on the offense instead of sitting back, because this is our election that they're trying to steal.
There is. Well, I'll give you one quick way to go, and it's exactly what Donald Trump said. The people out there saying that Russia hacked the election to benefit Donald Trump are the same people who said Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. And that's all you need to say to make your point. And that's the meme that needs to go viral. We don't need to get into the fine details. Look back at all the times this government has lied to you about no weapons on the Lusitania, Pearl Harbor was a surprise, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, the attack on the USS Liberty was just an accident due to bad weather. How many times do you have to be lied to until you understand everything coming out of the government and the corporate media is just another lie? Because they don't know anything else to do. Their entire motto is, if at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. And even though the CIA has already come on out saying there was no secret report to Congress, Podesta is out there saying, oh, we need intel on Russia's efforts to get Trump elected. And, you know, this is the last week before the Electoral College. And they need to somehow convince, beg, bribe, blackmail, threaten 38 electors to vote for Hillary Clinton who are not supposed to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's a huge, huge, huge number. And given their batting average so far with all these recounts and everything else, I don't know that they're going to reach it. But we all have to stand up and say, you know, this has gone on long enough. This is ridiculous. It is absolutely destroying America's image around the world with all these Hillary liberal crybabies throwing their tantrums here. And I think everybody in every state needs to get to their elections people, whatever form it takes, and say, look, if our electors are not going to follow the mandate to vote for the winner of our state, replace them right now. And you need to start making those phone calls today.
Right. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard you give was, if you're talking to folks, try to go slowly and don't give them too much information at once. Everything you said, I agree with 100%. I just think that it's so simple. These are leaks. They're not hacks. And this is the ammo that they're trying to use. And everything they've done has failed so far. I personally just want to be more proactive. I'm going to make my sign. I live in a pretty metropolis area, and I'm just going to take the hits. And how can you argue these are leaks, these are not hacks? And I'm not going to even get into any more complications than that. But, you know, thanks again. Obama telling the troops to disobey Trump, that's, you know, he's going to have to swallow his own medicine, because I think the troops are now going to have to not listen to Obama. That guy's a criminal, and he should be locked up. Thank you, Mike.
They all are. What we are seeing is the fall of the narcocracy. For 30 years, this country has been ruled by a political elite that is up to their neck in drug profits. And it goes all the way back to that CIA Operation Screwworm that was smuggling guns down to Nicaragua and paying for it all by smuggling cocaine back into this country to sell to our children. And the northern end of that gun and drug pipeline was Arkansas under then Governor Bill Clinton. And the Bushes and the Clintons made huge amounts of money, And their plan has been pass off the White House from Bush to Clinton to Clinton to Bush to Clinton to Bush, back and forth, as if it's their hereditary right. And Obama got in on them in 2008, but he indicated he was going to go along with this. He was perfectly okay with the biggest drug smuggler in the country being the country. But Trump is something else entirely. This 2016 election was supposed to be Jeb Bush against Hillary Clinton, so it didn't matter how the American people voted. The narcocracy would continue. And Jeb Bush couldn't connect with the voters, couldn't get rid of that deer in the headlight look. That obvious, I'm a nepet, I'm really not qualified to be here. And Trump got in on them, and that's why they're panicking right now. Because this is the end of the party. This is the end of the drug money corruption, at least for the foreseeable future, and that's why they're in a panic. Anyway, we're going to let you go here. And I need to do a little update because the message I was given about the Pro-Pure products, the Christmas special, I didn't have the phone number, so I'm going to give that to you now. Get out a pencil and paper, write this down. And the number is 800-724-2719, extension 2 for orders over the telephone. And again, this is the Christmas special for the Pro-Pure products at republicbroadcasting.org from now until Christmas, 25% off, 1 quarter off. That's a real good deal to get some of these products either for yourself or for Christmas gifts, especially as people become more health conscious and aware of how what you get at the supermarket and the pharmacy is actually worse for you. Finding healthy alternatives is a good way to show somebody that you care about them on this Christmas shopping season. All right, we're going to go ahead and do a little blurb here about the economic news. And okay, let me fix something here. We're having some tech issues. There we go. All right. Now, as you know, over in Italy, they're in a bit of a turmoil. Their top 8 banks are in serious, serious trouble following the collapse of Renzi's referendum a week ago. And Renzi has announced his resignation. There's going to be a caretaker government until the next general election. But the banks are in serious trouble because what the referendum was going to do was consolidate more power under Renzi and bring about changes to the law to allow Italy to take more money away from the Italian people and give it to the banks to keep the banks going. And the Italian people said, no, that's a raw deal. Whether it's Italy or the United States or Germany or Brussels or whatever, their sales pitch is, you must make do with less so we can have more. You must make do with less so we can have more. You must make do with less so we can have more, and that is becoming a very, very tough sell around the world as people go hungry while the bankers are living lives of wealth rivaling that of Midas. So Italy's banks are in serious trouble. They're looking for bailouts, and here is something that is going to really throw a monkey wrench into the works. The European Central Bank is saying they're not in a position to provide any assistance to the Italian banks. See, what's been going on in the European Union, I've often described it as a wooden boat with 15 holes in the bottom and only 14 corks, and everything the European Union and the European Central Bank do basically amounts to grabbing a cork out of one hole, shoving it into another hole in full view of the media saying, I'm working on the situation, but the debt continues to pour on in. And the ECB's goal was to spread the debt uniformly across all the European Union and keep everybody just hovering at the edge of default. But at some point, they were going to run out of the means to keep the system afloat, and it appears it has now happened, with the ECB saying they are not in a position to be able to help Italy's banks. And if they start falling apart, it will domino across the EU as well. Now, the other day we were talking about how OPEC, in order to drive oil prices back up, was cutting back on their production. And we pointed out the ridiculous story in the corporate media, specifically a local radio station here, about how higher oil prices were going to be a good thing for consumers. Yes, when you go to the gas station and your gas costs a lot more, that's a good thing. You will believe this is a really good thing. Well, now apparently the non-OPEC oil-producing countries have agreed to cut their oil production by 500,000 barrels per day. And so we are going to see the oil prices go back up. That's good news for the oil companies, good news for the frackers. But in the end, yes, it's going to harm ordinary consumers. It's going to drive up the price of our gasoline. It will drive up the price of anything that uses any kind of petroleum for the manufacture or transportation of products. It's inevitable. Now, over in India, they are trying an experiment in demonetization. They've cut out all those higher value currency notes. They're trying to force everybody onto the plastic. It is turning into a disaster. More when we come back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, as you know, the bankers have a dream of taking away that last bit of freedom and control you have over your own money by bringing about the cashless society. And it's being sold on this idea that a cashless society will end corruption, terrorism, and the drug trade. And, of course, no, it won't do anything of the kind. The reason for the cashless society is to lock your money inside the banks, where you are now dependent on the banks to carry out all your commerce for you for a fee, and the government can see what it is you're doing with your money at all times and apply the appropriate taxes. And once your money is locked in the bank and there's no way for you to get it out, the banks can go on with this path of negative interest rates and just help themselves to your money whenever they want. There's never going to be a run on the bank because you can knock on the door and say, I want my money, and they say, there is no money. It has to be in a bank somewhere. And together with that, they will ban private ownership of gold or silver or anything else that could represent a portable store of value. And they're using as the first test case India. And it's already turned out to be a disaster. We're already getting reports that India is raiding people's homes for gold. They're talking about banning gold. And that's a heavy hit on gold because up until recently, India has been a huge consumer market for gold. You go into any marketplace, there are all these stalls with bracelets and necklaces and all the rest of it. Now they're saying, nope, that's all going to go away. And they're discovering all of a sudden people aren't spending money. And there's actually a very simple explanation for that. When you're wandering around a marketplace and you have cash in your pocket, you know how much cash you have. And you know what you can spend. And you can whip it out and say, oh, this is going to be $5. All right, I'm going to buy this, $5. How many people actually walk around knowing what the balance of their account is at the bank? And how much room they have before they do a cash transfer to a merchant and risk bouncing a check? Most people don't. And most people don't want to take that chance. And what they're discovering in India is if they don't have cash in their pocket, they're just not buying stuff. Now, Foxconn has had to fire 25% of their workers because demonetization has destroyed retail sales. And sales have collapsed by half, and the company is slashing production. They're letting people go. They're wrecking the place to keep the bankers happy. And as far as the terrorists are concerned, and the drug dealers and all the rest of it, they'll use jewels as monetary units, or they'll use something else even more dangerous. Like, here, I've got some weapons-grade plutonium. I'll trade you for whatever. A lot of people in India are now resorting back to barter because they don't want to be enslaved to the banks. And it really hammers home something I've been saying all along. Modern banking is not about the economy. It's not about what's best for the people or the nation. It is a system of enslavement. And this push for a cashless society is the final lock on the slave chain. And they don't care how much harm they cause to ordinary people as long as they get their dream where all the money of the world is locked up in their banks. And there is a problem there. Because if the banks collapse and people still have money in their home, they can get by. If all the money is now in the bank and you're not allowed to have any and the banks collapse, people are going to be eating each other inside of 2 weeks' time. That's how dangerous and poorly thought out this policy is. Now, the U.S., despite promises of unemployment is only 4.6%, and the stock market is the Dow is heading for a record 20,000. Total household debt in the United States rose by $63 billion with a B last quarter. Total household debt of the American people is $12.35 trillion. It's almost 10% of the government debt. And much of that debt is now coming through auto loans, and many of those are now being subprime with ridiculously high interest rates. Going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're wrapping up with the economy right now. As you know, one of the big bones of contention for the incoming Trump administration is what is going to be done with Obamacare. Now, we all know that Obamacare has been a complete and unmitigated disaster. It has failed in its overt purpose of making health care affordable to all Americans. And it's failed by forcing us to buy these incredibly expensive health insurance policies with sky-high deductibles, which means even after paying for these very expensive policies, most Americans will never actually use them. Because in a normal year of healthy living, they'll never hit the deductible. It's completely useless. This was set up to generate huge windfall profits for the health insurance industry that wrote the Affordable Care Act, with the U.S. government getting their mafia-like piece of the action in the form of taxes. And it's failed on that because people can't afford these policies. They're going with the IRS penalty instead, and the IRS is just ramping up the penalty, saying, "You will buy this policy, or we will take your money some other way." Now, Obamacare had a covert purpose as well, which was the generation of new tax revenues that a hopelessly broke and deeply in debt government could use to hold the bankers off just a little bit longer. And it failed with that as well. Some of these health insurance companies backing Obamacare have gone out of business. Some of the exchanges have closed. A lot of these other health insurance companies are trying to invoke a provision of the Affordable Care Act that says if they don't make the promised profits, they get a taxpayer bailout. And if it were not for the fact that a very hard winter has started setting in, I would have expected Obama to be out there screaming about the need for a carbon tax in his final month in office. So Trump is out there saying they're going to take it down, whether they're going to revise it seriously or just scrap it and go back to a free market approach of health insurance companies having to compete for your business by offering low premiums and high service. We don't know. But there is now a political action group, if you will, being formed to block any efforts by Donald Trump to change Obamacare. They're calling it Protect Our Care. It should more properly be called Protect Our Profits, because that's what it's really all about. Now then, let's talk about immigration, because in the midst of everything else, that is still a major, major issue. Here's one area where Donald Trump could maybe look at controlling a lot of costs, because apparently, according to a U.S. watchdog, the Immigration Reform Law Institute, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency spends $100 million simply ferrying illegal immigrant children around the U.S. so they can't be found and deported. We even have, some of them have been sent out here to Hawaii, courtesy of the taxpayer. Now, over in Denmark, somebody finally decided it was time to really look at this underage immigrant. Oh, they're children. We must take them in. They're children. They're so innocent. We must care for them. And apparently, Dutch authorities were a little suspicious about what was going on. And they suspected that some 800 asylum seekers were lying about their age to be able to come in as underage immigrants, and they asked the University of Copenhagen's Department of Forensic Medicine to run tests involving x-rays of their teeth and finger bones, because as you grow, the number of layers of enamel on your teeth expand. It's like tree rings. And what they discovered is that 74% of those supposed underage immigrants are actually adults. And I'm sure what we'll hear from the White House is, well, they self-identify as children, so we're going to let them stay. Yes, they may be adults, but they self-identify as children, so we're going to let them use the children's laws and the children's playroom and the Play-Doh and the safe spaces and everything like this. Now, last week we reported on what was a huge embarrassment for Angela Merkel, where Maria Ladenberger, the daughter of European Commission advisor Clemens Ladenberger, was raped and murdered by a migrant, and underscored the fact that this refugee program in Europe has brought with it a huge increase in violent crime, including sexual crime. Merkel is now out there saying, well, it's just an isolated incident. Yes, it's tragic that Maria died, but really it's just an isolated incident, and now that I've banned the wearing of the burqa, you shouldn't even see that there's a refugee problem anymore. Well, it isn't the burqa that's the problem. It's the rapes, it's the murders, it's the robberies, it's the kicking of people downstairs that was caught on video. Now, here in the United States of America, in Louisville, Kentucky, two women were walking by the side of the road. Well, actually, they were standing there following a minor traffic accident. And a man named Miguel Angel Villaseñor Socido, driving a truck, ran off the road, hit and killed both women. He then fled the scene on foot, hit and run. And they're looking for him, and in digging into his past, they found out this guy has been deported from the United States 8 times and let back in. Do you know these illegal immigrants and these refugees are getting a better deal from the U.S. government than our veterans do? Does that make any sense at all? Meanwhile, from the area of political correctness, this is a very bizarre story. Over in Great Britain, there is a store that specializes in British-themed products. Now, to put this in context, that would be like here in the United States of America, there's a little store that has American flag mugs and American flags and American flag posters and buttons and all the rest of that stuff. That's what I mean by a theme store. And so they're in North London, there's a shop called Really British, and it sells British-themed products in Great Britain. And apparently the PC movement in Great Britain is now denouncing him as racist and demanding he shut his shop down. I mean, that's completely over the top here. Now, I could imagine if this British-themed shop was operating in, say, Dubai, it might make some people uncomfortable, but we're talking about a shop that sells British products in North London, Great Britain, and the PCers are saying, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't be British in Great Britain anymore because we're all part of the New World Order. Don't you understand how that works? Now, over at the University of Pennsylvania, students have removed a portrait of Shakespeare that was on display in the school's English department, complaining that Shakespeare does not represent a diverse range of writers. Now, Shakespeare was an English writer. Let's not kid ourselves. And he was a very good writer. That's why his plays are still read and performed to this very day and made into movies. And the students out there are saying, well, no, we need diverse writers. You know, we're going to put up this writer, this person of color that nobody ever heard from before. We got to put that up there. How about we abandon this quota-based system of honoring people based on a lottery of what color they are, where they come from, what gender they are, what orientation are, and go back to a world of meritocracy, where those who are doing excellent work get the recognition, because it encourages more people to do excellent work rather than sit back, coast along, and hope their skin color gets them advancement in society. Now, Shakespeare deserves to be honored and recognized when you look at the body of his work. As does Mark Twain, as does Edgar Allan Poe. We need to return to a meritocracy. We have gone so far away from that, where, and again, this goes back to that wonderful newsroom series on HBO, and during Will McAvoy's speech about how America is not the greatest nation on earth, where he said, we used to applaud intelligence. It didn't make us feel inferior. It gave us something to strive toward. We're not there anymore. We're in a society where you go and what you do is determined at birth by your skin color, or later on your religion, or your orientation, or your gender. If you fit the menu, you get the advancement. You get the job. It's amazing. All righty. As you know, up in North Dakota, and the first thing I have to do is hats off to those Dakota Access Oil Pipeline protesters, because they are in the middle of this gargantuan blizzard. They do finally have tents and heating equipment, and they're still there because of the Dakota Access Pipeline's statement defying the federal government, saying they're going to go on building this pipeline. They don't care what the federal government says. They could care less. Government. We're corporations. We rule the planet now. By the way, over at Sci-Fi Channel, they got a new series called Incorporated, and Sci-Fi is finally starting to get some good product. I mean, for a while they'd gone down with all this Roger Corman nonsense like Dino Croc versus Super Gator, and they finally woke up. And this Incorporated is a very interesting show about a world where corporations run everything. And civil government is sort of a vestigial, traditional kind of wrapping, but it's all corporate. And we're seeing that in this Dakota Access Pipeline Company. Well, they've got a new problem up there because, as you know, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we reported on an oil pipeline in North Dakota that ruptured underneath a farmer's field, basically destroying it, rendering it unusable. Now there have been 2 more pipelines in North Dakota rupture. Bell Forsh Pipeline Company estimates that 130,000 gallons of oil has spilled into a tributary of the Little Missouri River last week, and another 46,200 gallons leaked into a hillside. And it's gotten into Ash Coulee Creek. And this is one of the concerns expressed by the Dakota Access Pipeline people, is that this pipeline, if it leaks, it's not just going to be the water supply for the people on the reservation. That water flows into 4 states, and it will carry that oil with it. And by the way, if you didn't realize it, raw petroleum is known to be carcinogenic. Let's grab a phone call here from Terry in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, all that stuff you're talking about the immigration, everybody's got the question, what incentive do these leaders of these countries have to destroy their country like that? It must be substantial leverage. You know,
well, they're all on board. They're all on board with this new world order that George Soros wants to bring about, and he's got the money to make it happen, where there's going to be a single global government, a single golden throne of planet Earth, and all of these world leaders who are on this agenda are dreaming that it will be their butt polishing the seat on that throne. And it's a terrible, terrible idea for a number of reasons. First and foremost, if you have, let's imagine for a moment there had been a single global government back in the 1940s and Adolf Hitler had seized power there. There would have been nobody to stop him, would there? And
I don't know, but it spread so widely around the world. I mean, it must have. I mean, it's more than George Soros. It's got to be. I mean, are these people getting
well, the United Nations is on board with this. The liberal agenda is on board with this. It is a widespread movement. The Bilderbergers talk about it. They all think a one world government is a really great idea because it's going to be a single giant human farm with a single private central bank holding us all in debt slavery until the sun swallows the earth. That's their dream.
Well, it's pretty critical. A lot of these Germans are leaving Germany now. There's a big migration out amongst the native Germans.
Yes, I know.
And is Donald Trump going to be any different? I mean,
Donald Trump, right from the beginning, with his slogan "Make America Great Again," indicated he's not on board with this open borders policy or this single global government. As President of the United States of America, he wants to work for the United States of America, and everybody else is just going to have to take care of themselves. And that, of course, is anathema to the globalists and New World Order. That's why they've been attacking him, because they're so close to their single global government they can almost taste it. And it's a bad idea, because national borders serve the same function as fireproof doors in a building or watertight hatches in a ship. They contain problems. And if you prop open the fireproof doors in a building or you lock open the watertight hatches in a ship, it may feel like things are going better because you can get around faster, but the first fire destroys the entire building, the first leak sinks the entire ship, and that's, look at what economic globalism did back in 2008. Without those impediments at national borders to the flow of money, the meltdown of the mortgage-backed security fraud in 2008 infected banks all over Europe and Asia, and it became a global problem. We need to reinforce safety barriers so that when one little area of the planet gets into trouble, it doesn't ignite disaster in the rest of the world.
Exactly. But Trump is supporting Israel. He's all the time reinforcing the fact that we're going to defend it and all this kind of thing. And he's really beholden to the bankers, too, because they bailed him out for his billion-dollar almost bankruptcy. It was a bankruptcy back, so many years ago.
Well, he's not. Hang on. Okay, you're wandering. You're wandering off the topic here. Okay. Now, Donald Trump, despite his casual approach to Hillary's attempts to hijack the Electoral College, he understands in a very real way he's still campaigning, and he's making a lot of noises, and he's having to repay a lot of favors. But just imagine if Hillary had won that election. She is far more slavishly devoted to Israel. She's certainly on board with the New World Order agenda and open borders and all this refugee nonsense. Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go to the phones here. Jerry in Chicago. Aloha. I imagine it's rather cold where you are right now, and what's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I wanted to just touch on something you talked about last segment about the best person qualified for the job, no matter what the race or color, creed, or religion, gets it. And something that I had heard over the past 3 years, more than likely on RBN, is that somebody applied for a job down in Indiana as an engineer, and they were homeschooled. And Indiana had passed some kind of a rule, or the federal government stepped in and said, no, you can't hire anybody that was homeschooled. They have to have credentials, blah, blah, blah. They have to go through the indoctrination system. Mm-hmm. And they were the best qualified for the job. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks a lot. I'll take your comment off here. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And you're absolutely right. The education industry, as it were, tries to make itself essential for job advancement because, of course, that's what they're selling to the kids coming on in and going into $20,000, $30,000 in student loan debt. If you don't have a college degree, you will never accomplish much of anything. And the backside of that, of course, is that universities will lobby governments saying, and businesses only hire our college graduates because we have to keep our little business going. But we look at people who have been outside the educational system who have done such wonderful things because they weren't indoctrinated. You need to understand that certainly for the advanced degrees, masters and PhDs, it's really a process of swearing loyalty to past academia. If you get on, for example, if you're going for a PhD in astronomy and you get up there and you say, I have doubts about the Big Bang, you're not going to get your PhD. Or climate science. If you question that, you won't get a degree. Get out of here, And in many ways, it's almost like a religion rather than an academic pursuit. but you look at people like Steve Jobs or Steven Spielberg, who did what they did outside the educational system. Thomas Edison, the same way. Sometimes not going through that formal educational system frees your mind to think in directions that wouldn't occur to somebody whose mind is bounded by that academic framework. So, again, I think there should be more emphasis on intelligence and capability and less on conformance to society's expectations of whether it's academic certification or the correct race or the correct gender or the correct orientation. And, of course, a big part of the liberal political philosophy is if you're not succeeding in life, it's not your fault. There's somebody that we can blame for it, and we are going to politically drive them out so that you can have the success they had, which is a big part of this anti-white fever that is sweeping our nation. If you go over to WikiLeaks and you look up the definition of black power, they'll say it's a movement to feel pride in your black heritage. Brown power, it's a movement to feel pride in your brown heritage. White power, oh, it's an excuse for racism and white supremacy. I mean, the bias is very obvious. We have got to take a break for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And hour number 3, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We've got some calls waiting on the line. Before I get to them, though, the breaking story is now that Obama is calling for an Electoral College intelligence briefing prior to their vote next week to brief them on how Russia stole the election from Hillary Clinton and gave it to Donald Trump. So basically what we've got here now is the current administration in the White House is now openly questioning the legitimacy of Donald Trump. And however this plays out, the reputation and image of the United States of America has been absolutely destroyed around the world in their lust to cling to power. The narcocracy doesn't want to let go. And they're destroying America's image in the process. So there are days when I'm really ashamed to be an American, and I want to qualify that by saying I don't have a problem with the United States of America. I don't have a problem with most of my fellow American citizens. I don't have a problem with the Constitution. I do have a problem with Washington, D.C., and what a crybaby bunch of spoiled, drug-corrupted brats they've turned out to be. It's humiliating to have the rest of the world judge the American character by the behavior of these people. Let's grab some phone calls here. Errol in the Netherlands, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you took the words out of my mouth, because I just wanted to say Donald Trump, he said something about China.
Mm-hmm.
We see this all about in the news and everything. And what is the date today? It's the 12th of
It's the 12th here, but
the 13th. The 13th.
Well, okay,
not
I guess.
Even, yeah, not even. What is it? Not even 2 days or 3 days over that he has been recognized as the president, the next president of the United States. What we see here now is very interesting, because I just want to say this. I know personally, it's not a feeling, it's just logic. Donald Trump will make it in the inauguration. It calls inauguration in America. Inauguration, he will be the next president. And we need, and those people that are so frustrated, so what you said a few days before, like, how do you call it? The sect. That
The
one
cult.
sect,
The
know?
cult, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. This is how the people think. And that is they are desperate. But I must say one thing to the American people, and I'm living in the Netherlands, and I'm living also in Amsterdam. New York, when New York was created, it was first called New Amsterdam.
Yes.
You know, when you look at history, exactly. So we now need to get together, do business with the world, and those people who just want more for themselves and less for each other, or less for the poor people, they just want more, more, more. Donald Trump will be the man. I will say this now. This will be, I just know this. I know politics. I've studied this for 15 years. And I just, also, has John in Barbados already called in?
Yes.
Oh, did he talk about Syria?
Yes, he did.
Okay, very good. You know, the world is changing. The new world order, there will be a new world order, but not in their mindset, not in this greedy mindset. There will be a new world order, but a new world order for all of mankind. And this is my last word. Mike, thank you for my call. Thank you for taking my call, and I wish you a very nice day.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. There is no question we're on the brink of a dramatic change all over the globe. And as Errol says, it's not going to be the establishment of the one world government agenda. It's going to go exactly the opposite way, to a decentralization where power is going to flow back from these places like Brussels and Washington, D.C., out to the various states and provinces. We're seeing the beginning of the decentralization of news media away from these single individuals who are corrupting everything. And remember, when the United States was started, there were laws that said nobody is allowed to own too much of the media because of the possibility of mischief, especially after the Hearst newspapers. And they saw just how powerful he'd become. They passed laws saying you're not allowed to own too many newspapers or radio stations in a single market. During the first Iraq War, the U.S. government went to the largest media corporations and they said, we'll make you a deal. If you will embed your reporters with our troops and report the war the way we want you to, we will repeal the laws that limit how much media you can have, and you can go on a buying frenzy and buy up all your small competitors and form these giant media conglomerates. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why today all media is flowing just through a handful of individuals who are deciding for you what you will think, what you will believe, what will be important to you, what will not be important to you. Will remind you that, you know, Kim Kardashian is coming back. And that's the important news of the day. And I think we're going to see a pushback from that. If Trump is able to prevent Hillary Clinton from stealing the White House from him, 2017 is going to be the year of the rise of the independent media. And we're not going to be a single large giant corporation. We're going to be 1,000 voices all across America, each with a different point of view, so that you will be able to listen to all the different shows and points of view and come to a good decision on what you want the country to be doing next. Thomas Jefferson said, it is the highest duty of any citizen to keep themselves fully informed so you can make good choices. Sadly, in this day and age, watching the corporate media does not keep you fully informed. It's a giant lie. You're not informed. They want you to think that you're informed. They want you to think you know everything that's going on. At the same time, they're rendering you deaf, dumb, and blind to what's going on in the real world. All right, let's take a phone call from Robert. Oh, first of all, I got to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And let's go to Robert in Tennessee. Robert, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call, Michael. Couple of things. What have you found is the best method to vet or shepherd the news that you read on the internet?
Well, first of all, and I've said this many, many times before, you need to think about what you're being told to see if it really, really makes sense. I'm very much shocked to see so many people where the TV will say Donald Trump molested women, and they just say, oh, okay, Donald Trump molested women. That's what they parrot from then on. They're not thinking about what's going on. In terms of analyzing some of these big lies, the advice I always put on out is think about what's going on, look for what should be there and isn't. And if there's a big hole in that backstory, then you know you're being fed a lie. And the classic example I like to use was back when Obama and John Kerry were screaming about how Bashar al-Assad was using sarin gas on his own Alawite supporters right in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors on the very day the inspectors arrived in Syria. And, of course, the first question that comes up is, what is the motive? Why would Assad do something that stupid knowing that the U.S. was looking for an excuse to invade? And, of course, it later came on out that these chemical weapons attacks were by the U.S.-backed rebels to frame on Bashar al-Assad, and even the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors came to that same conclusion. So that's a really good way to be looking for it. The other thing, of course, is I think we're at an age right now where people aren't just going to automatically accept what they get from the corporate media anymore. The last poll I saw, only 6% of Americans still trust the corporate media. And that, to me, is a very, very healthy thing. You shouldn't trust anybody in the media or anybody in government. History has shown that anybody who was double-crossed, used, or betrayed or lied to had it done to them by somebody they thought they could trust. And that's what government and corporate media are always out there saying, trust us, just have faith and trust. We are on your side. And they betray that trust over and over and over and over again. And now the American people are waking up about that. And I don't know how this whole thing with Hillary is going to play out. But again, I'm seeing so many parallels between what our nation is going through right now with the collapse of public trust in the government and the media, with the last few months before the collapse of the Soviet Union. We could still see that happen here, especially if Hillary steals the White House. There'll be no more trust and confidence and faith in the federal government system, and we could see the whole shebang come crashing down, just like the Soviet Union did.
My second question, Michael, would be, you know, when you talk to people and you tell them some things that, especially people who are only absorbed into the regular news media, they will say, where did you read that, on the internet? So as far as when, and I know they do that with you, so what's your comeback to them, Mike?
Well, first of all, I don't waste my time with anybody who is, taken the blue pill and is enslaved to corporate media. They're a tiny minority anyway. What you need to do is develop a sense for people who are doubting and they're looking for answers and they're willing to listen. And the other rule, the art of the rabble-rouser is knowing what the rabble is willing to listen to and what they are not ready to hear. So you have to walk a very gentle course. Don't overwhelm them with how much stuff that you have. And anytime somebody starts saying about, well, that's the Internet, and I believe the corporate media, and just say, the corporate media told you Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. The corporate media told you snowfall was a thing of the past back in 2000. The corporate media, and, just lay about 5 or 6 of the known documented lies where everybody knows that's what happened. Oh, yeah, they lied about that. And, once you do that, and then you say, okay, maybe you need to stop listening to these people who provably lie to you and realize there is another world out there. That you and remind them, finding the truth is hard work. Nobody gives you the truth for free. Those TV networks are not paid the money. They're paid to feed you the truth. They're there to sell you things. The next car, the next war, the next tax, the next candidate, the next vaccine, the next whiz-bang fashion accessory that they want you to buy for the Christmas shopping season. That's what they're in business to do. What television actually sells, amazingly enough, is you, your brain, your mind. That's what TV does. TV rounds you up, they lure you in with TV programming, and then they sell you to the advertisers to deliver you up in a receptive state for that 30 or 60-second pitch, which is the real point of the TV networks, to get you in there paying attention to the commercials. Little story I want to share with you about the original Star Trek. The original Star Trek, as you know, was a huge success with the fans, had very high Nielsen ratings. But it turned out it had very low Burke scores. Now, for those of you not in the industry, the Nielsen ratings are a measure of how many people are watching the show. The Burke score is a measure of how many people are watching the commercials. And what they discovered was because Gene Roddenberry's stories were so engaging and raising so many social questions that people were talking through the commercials, discussing what they saw on the show. And that's why NBC tried to kill it after one season. Even though it was popular, the advertisers didn't like it. So that's really what shapes their thinking.
Thanks, Michael. Listen, I enjoy your program immensely, and I do appreciate all you do. And I know you make some really big sacrifices. And I want you to know that it doesn't go unnoticed.
Well, thank you very much. And especially right now, Claire and I are feeling the pressure. And it's just so angering to see this country that we were born into and love philosophically just being torn apart by people who have appointed themselves our masters. And I think the single most heartbreaking thing about what's going on right now, regardless of how it finally ends up, in the process, Hillary and her Democrats, her narcocracy, have absolutely destroyed America's image and reputation around the world. Will be a century getting it back, if ever.
I agree.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. I do appreciate you talking to me.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Well, I'm starting to replace some of the equipment here, and I need to do the mixer next. So let's talk about human-caused global warming, because anybody that says there's no such thing as a wide-ranging conspiracy to defraud the people of the world, we've got one right here, staked out, naked on the ground for you to study and learn from. It involved NASA, NOAA, the United Nations, the IPCC, Hadley Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, New Zealand Meteorological, Australia Meteorological, the Met Office in Great Britain, all of these so-called science channels that were pushing human-caused global warming, human-caused global warming. Back in 2000, they were proclaiming snowfalls are a thing of the past, and look at the winter that is settling in on us now. Apparently today, more than 1,500 flights had to be canceled at the Chicago and Detroit airports because of the snow and ice coming on in. Nearly a foot of snow across Metro Detroit. And the carbon Nazis are still not giving up. The story they're trying to put out there now is the polar vortex has brought the Arctic cold down to us. But if you were somehow able to go up to the Arctic, which they know you can't, you'd find it's warm and sunny, and you could just get into your bathing suit and sunbathe up there at the North Pole, because that's where all the human-caused global warming is hiding now. Now, the National Weather Service in Duluth is forecasting the first widespread below-zero temperatures by Saturday morning. And we're still officially not quite into winter. We're getting there. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog. Record 2016 snowfall in North American cities matches Maunder minimum cooling areas. Now, we've talked about this before. Contrary to the claims of Al Gore and all of the people in the media who supported him, just like they're supporting Hillary Clinton, human activity does not dominate climate on Earth. There is an effect. It is minuscule. Climate on Earth is primarily determined by two things: the amount of solar energy we are receiving and the shape of the Earth's orbit. Now, Earth's orbit slowly oscillates between circular and elliptical. When it's elliptical, the Earth spends more time at the far end of the orbit further away from the Sun, following Kepler's laws of orbital motion, and that's when we get the ice ages. When the orbit becomes more circular and Earth spends more time closer to the Sun, we get the interglacials, which is where we are right now. Now, solar output is not constant. There are numerous solar cycles that influence the amount of energy it puts on out. There's the 11-year sunspot cycle, 22-year magnetic cycle and indications of longer cycles, 60 and over 100 years. We've only been able to study the sun scientifically for about 100 years. So we don't know if what we're seeing is part of a longer period cycle or not. But what is known is that a few hundred years ago, there was a period called the Maunder Minimum, where astronomers noticed that the sun had no sunspots for a prolonged period of time, and Earth cooled, leading to the Little Ice Age. And the indications are now we're seeing the beginning of a repeat of a new Maunder Minimum and a new Little Ice Age, and there is nothing Al Gore and his people can do to change it. It's just another scam. Politicians love to take something that happens naturally, declare it a crisis and emergency, and then offer to sell you a solution. Only we're not buying anymore. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about human-caused global warming. And apparently, up in Ontario, just in the last 24 hours, 500 collisions because of the snow and ice. And Canadians know how to deal with snow and ice, so this is like really a bad situation. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Gary in Saskatchewan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, buddy. What's going on? I was just noticing here, I just saw on Facebook, Judge Knapp, Napolitano.
Yes.
Just come on, and he said that he interviewed one of the top guys from the NSA, and he said it wasn't the Russians that hacked in to the DNC. It was the NSA that did that and fed it to WikiLeaks to release it.
Well, Craig Murray is saying exactly the same thing because he's out there saying he actually met the person who was the leaker to WikiLeaks, and it wasn't Russia. It was an intelligence agency insider. And so, no, I mean, if the NSA did this, good for the NSA and whoever did it. I'm going to have to take back some of the bad things I've said about them.
Well, that's probably the only positive thing they've ever done.
True.
But what really blew me away about this article, it's like a 2.5-minute video on Facebook of Judge Knapp. And but what really amazed me about it is he had to do it outside of the Fox studios. I thought,
that's very telling. That's very telling.
Well, gee whiz, I mean, you're the king of discernment on the airwaves. But, we're all waking up here. But anyways, I'm in Saskatchewan, and we're bringing in the Brass Monkeys tonight. It's minus 25 here.
Oh, ouch. Oh, man. You know, I've lived here in Hawaii so long, I've lost my tolerance for cold. I'm originally a New England farm kid where I loved winter, and, 60 was a comfortable temperature, and then lived briefly in Washington State after I left Los Angeles. But Claire and I have been in Hawaii so long, we're getting down to like 66, 67 at night, and we're cold. We're just...
Well, your blood thinned. I built a recycling plant in Jamaica in 2010 and lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I come back to Canada after I had a Broadzilla too.
Broadzilla was the last one. Claire is something else. And thank goodness my aunt in New England as a Christmas present sent us a new quilt. And it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and we're definitely going to be cuddling up underneath that thing.
But I just thought it looked good on Judge Knapp.
Yeah, I actually had seen that video. I think we actually linked to it. But the fact that he had to do it outside the Fox studios is very, very telling. But again, it lines up with what Craig Murray was saying. It lines up with what Julian Assange was saying. These were internal leaks. When the DNC emails first became available, even the DNC said there was absolutely no indication that their computers had been broken into from outside. But let's demon the Russians did it. The Russians stole it. The Russians ate my homework, teacher. Can I have a safe space?
Yeah, the Russians killed Kennedy too.
Yeah.
Right?
The Russians personally nailed Jesus to the cross.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are still open here. Speaking of Russia, apparently the Russian telecom giant Rostelecom has been thwarting distributed denial of service attacks on the 5 largest banks and financial institutions in Russia. The attacks all happened back on December 5th, the longest of them lasting for over 2 hours. So somebody's throwing a real tantrum here, and I think we need to look at Joe Biden's comments from just a couple of months back about how great it would be to launch cyber war against Russia. And it looks like they're actually doing it and trying to provoke Russia that way. Now, apparently the TalkTalk routers have been compromised by a variant of the Mirai worm that turns them into botnet agents to be used as armies to mount distributed denial of service attacks. More about this when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we went into the commercial break, we were talking about how there's a new variant of the Mirai worm that is infiltrating TalkTalk routers and is creating botnet agents to be used as distributed denial of service bots. And it's a huge problem. And they don't seem to know what to do about it. Which brings me back to this claim that Russia hacked the election to help Donald Trump. Because what we were told was, oh, we think it happened last week. Obama ordered the CIA to take a look at it. Then just 2 days later, the Washington Post is claiming the CIA sent a secret report to Congress saying, we've got proof Russia did this. This from the same government that has been unable to rein in cybercrime and ransomware writers for year after year after year after year. Remember what I said to that caller before about learning whether you're being lied to? Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that a government that can't find the ransomware writers could instantaneously say, we have proof of a nation state hacking the election system. And as John Bolton came on out and said, if Russia had done it, there wouldn't be a trace left of it. We're not talking about script kiddies running out of the basement of their parents' home. We're talking a nation state that's very, very capable. And we need to keep that in mind. It doesn't make sense. Even if Russia had wanted to hack the election, why would they leave a trace? The answer is they wouldn't. There's no reason for them to leave a trace. Unlike the Department of Homeland Security, which got caught hacking into the voter information database down there in Georgia. Now, apparently, Microsoft has done it once again. There's an update for Windows 8 and Windows 10 PCs, which apparently seems to have damaged what is called the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP. Now, DHCP, when you have a local network and you plug machines into the router, DHCP is what finds and arbitrates assigning the local IP numbers. If you want to get away from that nonsense, you have the option of hardwiring IPs into all of your various products, so it doesn't go through DHCP. But apparently, numerous ISPs all across Great Britain and Europe are saying these new Microsoft updated PCs cannot connect with the networks because of problems with DHCP. Apparently, the DHCP cannot automatically acquire their LAN side IP address, router address, and DNS settings from the broadband routers. So they drop off the internet and they vanish from other devices on their local network. Way to go, Microsoft. Now then, interesting little story coming out of daisyluther.com, where supposedly Elon Musk is coming out with an idea of a Wi-Fi capable brain implant. What could possibly go wrong? And they're talking about a computer interface implanted into the human brain, which, if you're familiar with books like Neuromancer and Burning Chrome by William Gibson, It's a major storyline. There is a problem with that, though. When you have a Wi-Fi port on your smartphone, the Wi-Fi port connects to a known standard communications protocol, which is the same from device to device to device to device to device. There's the problem. As we grow up, our brains evolve and adapt to our environment and our education in different ways. There is no standardized way of communicating with a human brain at that neuron level. There's no one place where it all comes together where you can dip into it. It's totally distributed. So it may sound like it's a good idea, but frankly, I don't see it as happening anytime soon. All right, let's grab a couple of phone calls. George in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike?
Doing fine.
Well, you know, the thing is, I was listening to local NPR driving home from work in the mornings. I work at nights, and I can tell you one thing. They are frantic. That's why I written out, thank you for posting on your website, but they were sitting there scared because all those laws they passed, like the Military Commissions Act, the Patriot Act, PD 51, all those draconian laws, you know, that were meant to take us down to arrest dissidents, to put down a resistance, now in the hands of Donald Trump could be used against them.
Yes.
They're scared.
Yes.
And, you know, it just comes to see if their arrogance, knowing their arrogance, thinking what goes around is not going to come around, and I just think that's what's happening. What goes around is going to come around.
Well, it's not just that. Again, it goes back to the fact that for 30 years we've had a political elite that is steeped in that drug money corruption out of the CIA's Operation Screwworm, where they were smuggling guns down to Nicaragua, and it was a violation of not only the Bolin Amendment but the Logan Act, so they couldn't get money for Congress to pay for all this, so they funded it by smuggling cocaine back into the United States of America to sell to our kids and pay for the guns and make themselves very rich. And they acquired enough money to literally buy their way to the highest levels of the U.S. government. It's a repeat of prohibition. This is what Gary Webb was talking about with his news series Dark Alliance, for which he was assassinated. And that's really what's going on here. And so all of Hillary's supporters understand they're looking at serious jail time for participation in a giant drug money laundry. That's what the Clinton Foundation is. It's a money laundry slush fund. And they're looking at they've been able to keep the lid on all these crimes all these years by being in power. Once they're out of power, you're going to see people going on back and actually looking at the evidence that indicates White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster was murdered. The FBI did cover it up on orders from the White House. They're going to be looking at Chinagate and how the Clintons did sell U.S. secrets to China in exchange for campaign donations. And then they're going to move up and say, was Hillary doing the same thing with that private email server and using the charitable foundation to collect and launder the money? These people are looking at drug charges, they're looking at espionage, they're looking at treason, and that is why they are so afraid right now of Trump's victory, because they won't be able to control the narrative, they won't be able to control the courts, and payback is going to be a Hillary.
Well, you know, I just want to ask you one thing, if you probably can get in the future. You can get Chuck Undersea on your show as a guest again for his new movie, Revelation.
I'll try. I don't have contact information, but I'll try and track him down. Okay?
Yeah, because you know, his new movie is a springboard from Behold the Pale Horse. It's a lot more expanded than the first movie. And
I really remember Behold the Pale Horse. That was a very, very good film.
This one's very well edited, much more expanded, but I just think they missed one thing. They should have had you as one of the people on there.
They know where to find me. I mean, one of the big problems Claire and I have had is that living out here in Hawaii, and it's a tropical paradise. Actually, no, it isn't because of TSA and the economy and everything. There are a lot of people who want to involve me in their various projects. They can't afford the airfare for me to come to the mainland. The one happy exception, obviously, being the History Channel, which was able to bring me back to California to film America's Book of Secrets. But after January 20th, when we see how this battle between Trump and Hillary resolves, Claire and I are seriously thinking we'd like to get back to the mainland so that I'm available for speaking engagements and more involvement in some of these TV programs. Also so that Claire can get a better class of singers for her music demos because while everybody here in Hawaii knows Tiny Bubbles and Little Pearly Shells, finding singers who can handle the more sophisticated music that Claire likes to write has been very, very difficult. And out of necessity, I've become a very, very good recording engineer. Claire's laughing in the other room. She knows what we go through. But it would be nice to actually get singers who could come on in, look at the sheet music, and hit the pitch on the first try. So, but again, we're putting that decision off until after January 20th. But we'd like to get back to the mainland. It's going to cost us about $30,000 to do it. But we really want to come back to the mainland under a Trump presidency.
Well, I just hope, set up a GoFundMe page. I throw in a few dollars.
Like I said, after January 20th. What I'm hoping is some rising independent media company is going to hire me and provide travel expenses, moving expenses rather, to get me back there. But we'll see what's going to happen. But like I said, if Hillary fails in this effort to steal the White House back from Donald Trump, 2017 is going to be the year of the rise of independent media. And it's going to be exciting to see it happen after all these years of slogging out here in the hinterland.
Well, thank you, Mike. Have a good day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mike in Tennessee. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Greetings, Mike. Let me just add a little bit what you were just talking about and then put in some information you were talking about earlier. It is the CIA bringing in the drugs at that time for that operation, and it was the sheriffs and the police who were distributing the drugs. They would go out and find their drug dealers. They would bust them. They would say, okay, here's the deal. You're working for us now. You sell our drugs, and you help us set up people that we want to keep the system going with, and you keep the drugs flowing, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's what they've been doing for a long time. I was helping in the Air Force in a covert operation back in the early 90s, flying operations in Arkansas, spotting pot plants that the sheriffs were growing on land that they seized from the Reagan administration civil forfeiture laws. And we brought down 4 sheriffs, and that's why I was railroaded, and that's why they're still after me today. MikeParsons.org is my website. They're trying to send me back for 10 years for another bogus charge.
Well, I'll take a look at your website here, but we know that's how it worked. Out in Los Angeles, my first wife was very much tied in with that drug culture, and I actually met Freeway Ricky Ross through her, who figured prominently in David Webb's stories, Dark Alliance. And he used to just openly brag that he was working for the Central Intelligence Agency, and that as long as he worked for CIA, the Los Angeles police would never touch him, and as long as he worked for CIA, the Los Angeles police never did.
Right. They had the congressman contacted by the farmers who were losing their 1,000-acre ranches and farms to these sheriffs in these backwoods counties, and they said, look, you got to help us get our farms back, or we're going to take out some sheriffs because they're stealing our land. And the congressman got with the Air Force, and they got the ability to utilize properly the auxiliary. Air Force Civil Air Patrol is an unpaid auxiliary, so there's no posse comitatus violation. And us volunteers were spotting pot plants, doing grid patterns training, and turning that over to them. They brought in National Guard from other states, found the pot, arrested the landowner, which was a sheriff, and off they went. So that is their problem with me. Now, earlier, you're talking about the elimination of money. I know people that fly a lot, and the problem now is that all these little airports have self-service gas stations. You have to have a credit card. Even if you go during normal operations, they don't want cash. If you go to a county-owned airport, I don't know of a single county-owned airport across this country that will take cash. They've all gone to credit card only, so they can track who's flying where.
Yes. I'm not at all surprised about that.
Right, and here's something else that I recently discovered. If you try to go to Walmart and get one of those Visa prepaid cards, it says nowhere on the packaging that you have to activate it with a Social Security number. And under penalty of perjury, if you give anybody else a Social Security number or a false one, you have committed a felony. So basically, there's an entrapment clause there. And when you go back to Walmart and say, you know what, I don't have a social, I can't use, I want to refund it, they say, sorry, can't do it, it's against policy. Oops. But if you call the corporate headquarters and you politely complain that you don't have a social and it doesn't say it anywhere in your policy manual, they will refund your money. But they don't like to because they're trying to get everybody to have a Social Security number and or go to cashless. Yeah,
and judging by what's going on in India, that could be the final blow to the U.S. economy. And you need to understand something. The fact that the stock market is soaring does not mean we have a working, healthy economy. If anything, it means the stock market is being artificially driven up to look good for the outgoing Obama administration, but that means the market is hideously overvalued, and that means when there's an upset, there's a long way to go before it stabilizes down at the bottom. Everyone's talking about 4.6 unemployment, which we know is a joke, and we've created all these new jobs in November. Those are the seasonal hires. They're all going to be let go in January. There's going to be a major dip in the economy in January as all these seasonal hires are let go, and of course they're going to blame it on Donald Trump. So we're not out of the woods on that one yet. As far as the U.S. government drug running, we have photos at my website of U.S. and coalition forces in Afghanistan guarding and protecting the opium poppy fields and handling and shipping those sacks of raw opium. And that is just the ugly reality of what our government has become over the last 30 years.
And don't forget the body bags coming out of Vietnam full of drugs. That's absolutely.
They transshipped right through here in Hawaii and contaminated our local political structure. We're still feeling those effects to this very day.
As they say, gold is the money of kings and silver is the money of gentlemen. Gentlemen, it's time to load up with silver.
It absolutely is. And debt is the money of the poor people.
Exactly.
All right.
God bless and have a great day.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Coming up almost at the end of the show here. We're seeing video coming out of Aleppo now that it's been liberated. And, boy, the party is going on. There are street parties all over the place. With news of the victory. None of these are being shown in the American corporate media because the narrative is, oh, those poor people of Syria, they're now back in the clutches of the evil tyrant Assad, and they're miserable and unhappy that they have not been freed from him. And the video from the ground is showing exactly the opposite. They're delighted to be saved from those U.S.-backed terrorists. Meanwhile, of course, up in Palmyra, the war continues on. The U.S. is not ready to let go of Syria yet, because Obama doesn't want that as part of his legacy in the White House. He wants that to be dumped on Donald Trump here. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break, and we'll be back with the last segment of our program after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're getting word that one of the luxury apartment blocks on the palm tree-shaped artificial island in Dubai is on fire. And it's several floors. It's a very spectacular blaze going on, and everybody is watching that tower, waiting for it to collapse into its own footprint like building number 7 did. Any second now, that entire building's going to come down right into its own footprint the way building number 7 did. Any second. Any second now it's going to happen. Any second. It's just, let's go get a falafel. Now, there's an interesting little article that came out of drcircus.com, and it's talking about the fact that this year, over 100 Freedom of Information Act requests have finally forced the CDC to admit that thimerosal is dangerous. It's a neurological Armageddon. And the agency has known for years that it can cause all kinds of neurological problems, including autism. It was officially banned in 1999, but it is still used in over 60 vaccines, and it's causing autism. Now, what kind of a government allows children to be neurologically crippled for a fast buck? And they're not thinking long-term, because at current exponential rates of growth, it is estimated by 2030, half of all children in the U.S. will be diagnosed as autistic because of vaccine damage. That means half of the American population will not be available for the workforce. And a significant portion of the available workforce will be tied up caring for the autistic children as they grow into adulthood. Even if the government adopts the draconian procedure of euthanizing children who are diagnosed as autistic, you still have a less than total workforce from the birth rate, and the rates of infection and diagnosis are still going up because they won't deal with the problem. Because it upsets the stockholders over at the big pharmaceutical companies. Apparently, last week, the Environmental Protection Agency released an environmental impact study regarding creeping bent grass. This is a genetically engineered grass that accidentally broke into the wild from the test planting. And the EPA, now that it's gone out there, is saying, well, we've looked at it, it's not a big problem. You shouldn't be worried that it broke out of its test field. It's okay, it's going to work out. Remember when kudzu first came to this country, and what an absolute nightmare problem it was displacing other indigenous plant species? And of course, this bent grass is designed to resist glyphosate. It can't be killed with Roundup. They're insane. They're all on antidepressants. That explains the thinking coming out of corporations and government. They're all on prescription antidepressants. There's the music. I got to do Jim Goddard's show up in Vancouver. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Don't forget to look at the Pure Pro products. 25% off Christmas special between now and the end of the year. RepublicBroadcasting.org. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.